narcissist has a false self. The false self starts as the narcissist's sanctuary, a kind of refuge. But the false self is also the narcissist's god. And so pathological narcissism is a form of private religion, where the narcissist sacrifices his true self to a divinity, to a god. And that god is the false self. So the false self is everything that the young narcissist is not. So narcissist is helpless, and the false self is omnipotent. A narcissist cannot predict the future. Narcissist doesn't know many things. The false self is infallible. It's omniscient. The narcissist is in pain. The false self is invulnerable. So pathological narcissism starts as a one-member cult. What the narcissist tries to do is impose this private religion upon people around him. Narcissist tries to convert you to his religion. He tries to convince you that his false self is not false at all. That you should worship that grandiose and inflated false self exactly as he does. The narcissist needs people around him to tell him that his false self is not false, but true. And that his fantasies are not fantasies, but realities. Because otherwise, the narcissist would crumble and disintegrate. And so the narcissist in this pursuit becomes compulsive. If he is not catered to, he becomes very aggressive in pursuing what I call narcissistic supply. And narcissistic supply is this fuel that the false self consumes, and an avalanche of attention, admiration, adulation, applause, affirmation, or in the absence of these, being hated, being feared, being anything, being noticed, one way or another. And all this is needed to sustain the impossible narrative, this piece of fiction, this concoction, this confabulation, the false self. And what happens to the true self? The frozen true self is the narcissist in his youth. It's crying in pain, it's isolated, and it's never growing. And around this small, suffering core, there is an enormous void. Instead of having an internal, mental, and emotional skeleton, the narcissist has an exoskeleton. And that external skeleton is the false self. Because without this false self, there's only a void left. If the false self were to be removed, the narcissist will vanish. The narcissist perceives any attack on the false self, any attack on his fantasies, any challenge to his grandiosity, any intrusion by reality, any countervailing statement, any disagreement, any criticism, he perceives all these as nothing short of life-threatening. And that's why you have narcissistic rage and this enormous aggression, which often culminates in violence, because the narcissist is virtually fighting for his life. And that also makes the narcissist hypervigilant. Narcissists scan their environment. Am I being challenged? Am I being insulted? Did anyone humiliate me? Am I being ignored? And I describe this scanning as cold empathy. It is a form of empathy because the narcissist needs to properly evaluate other people, to read them correctly, and to predict their behavior. So it is a form of empathy, but it lacks any emotional resonance. Every psychodynamic process in the narcissist is geared toward supporting this utterly implausible creation, the false self. Narcissists are concerned with one thing and one thing only, and that thing is narcissistic supply. They need narcissistic supply to support the false self. And if you can provide the narcissist with narcissistic supply, the narcissist will attach to you. And this attachment, this bonding, has a cycle. The cycle starts with idealization. When the narcissist spots a person who can become a stable, reliable, predictable source of narcissistic supply, the narcissist immediately starts to idealize that person. He starts to attribute to that person personal traits and a personal history which have very little to do with that person. And the idealization is necessary to the narcissist for two reasons, not one. First, if the supply comes from an ideal figure, the supply is of much higher quality. So, for example, a compliment that comes from a stupid person obviously is less valuable than a compliment that comes from a genius. And the second reason to idealize is that idealization allows the narcissist to take a snapshot of the person and then internalize that snapshot. The narcissist then proceeds to interact with a snapshot, never with a real person. In many ways, the narcissist is a predator in the true sense of the word, because the narcissist does consume others. He devours them. But the narcissist also consumes himself. This monster, the false self, eats the narcissist alive, consumes the true self, and there is nothing left of the narcissist but the false self.